Maserati, you think of sensuous design, you think of Italian flair, and you think of that long list of characterful cars that have dotted the company's history. And the Maserati Levante SUV has managed to bring that essence to a more practical shape quite convincingly. But now, today we're driving the Maserati Levante GT Hybrid. So do those attributes still hold true when you throw electrification into the mix? That's what we're here to find out today. To start with, the Levante GT Hybrid, unlike the name suggests, is only a mild hybrid system that assists a 2-litre turbo-petrol with a 48-volt alternator and an electric supercharger. It may be the entry point to the range, but still makes a healthy 330 PS and 450 Nm, while still being 18% more efficient than the V6 in the higher Modena trim. The GT Hybrid is quick, but not blisteringly so. The 0 to 100 kmph time comes in 6 seconds and the top speed is 240 km an hour. Now start driving the Levante GT Hybrid with this downsized engine and you realize that at least in the lower ICE or what is the equivalent of eco or normal modes, this motor is usual fare for what you would find in a luxury SUV such as this one. So it's quiet, it's refined, it's not too much noise coming into the cabin. And the electrification that's there, that e-boost from that electric supercharger does a great job of filling in the gaps in torque in the motor. So you have a linear, wide power band. So it's very easy to drive in these modes. And as always, that ZF 8-speed is just shuffling away in the background, rolling in those soft shifts. But once you dial it into sport mode, that's when the Levante GT Hybrid does a very good job of living up to that trident that's on the grille in front of it, because immediately you notice that there's a sense of urgency that's come into this car. To start with, you can hear it, there's this piped in sound which does a fair job of mimicking, say, a V6 rumble, and it'll even burble and snap right at the top of the rev band when you lift off the gas or upshift. So that's already egging you on. But then the engine becomes much more energetic, it's much more eager to rev out, the throttle response is much sharper. And as you can see, making brisk progress is not very difficult at all. But then the cherry on the cake, you see these paddles, they function with this really satisfying clink, metallic clink. So even though the ZF is giving you those hard edge shifts now, right exactly where you need it, you can't help but reaching for these paddles and really pushing this car hard. And this is where that electrically boosted power band is really helping you. So you really do have quite a lot of easily accessible performance. Even though the outputs may not seem all that great for a Maserati, you can use that output very, very easily. Maserati has thrown a kitchen sink worth of chassis tech at this SUV to make it not feel like one. So there is the Q4 AWD system that keeps the Levante rear driven, only sending up to 50% torque to the front axle when needed. The lighter engine up front and the battery pack placed on the rear axle make for good dynamic attributes, but there is also torque vectoring and a limited slip differential along with adaptive air suspension, which now tightens everything up. Which brings us to what really stands out when you drive the Levante GT Hybrid, which is the way this fairly large SUV handles a twisty bit of road. I mean, the whole raft of chassis tech that Maserati has thrown at it has brought with it some great driving characteristics. To start with, there's not much body roll. I mean, there is some, of course. I mean, it's a big SUV, but with the air suspension lowering down to a very useful height in the sport mode, you have just a bit of tilt and sway. It's nothing unnerving, far from it in fact. For example, the kind of speeds that you can carry when you're just skipping along a twisty bit of road is really quite endearing. There's a lot of grip coming through the car, so you can hold very high speeds in corners. The car stays perfectly stable. There's a little bit of twitching and skipping when you really push it hard, but it's more engaging than anything else. And again, sort of egging you on further is the steering. Okay, it feels a bit lifeless in the lesser modes, but put it into sport and there's genuine old school feedback coming through. So the steering weighs up, it moves around in your arms a bit. Not enough to maybe scare you or for us to call it kickback, but just enough to let you know exactly what the front of the car is doing. And now with the lighter engine, the smaller lighter engine, the front too feels really sharp and darty, so it's quite eager to tuck into a corner to sort of, hold its line well. So if you really like, driving up a hilly section of road, but you have a family, you have that, you have to put on that practical hat, so to speak, the Levante GT Hybrid is certainly the car you should look at. There are some blink and miss styling updates to go with the first wave of these electrified models from Maserati. So the red from the Maserati Trident is now gone, while the distinct 3 side ports too now have a blue highlight to them. The tail lamps have also been slightly revised to become sleeker with their LED light signature. It's good that the visual changes are limited because the Maserati Levante continues to be a stunner. Even in this plain white shade, the front with the caved-in grille and white lamps looks angry yet elegant. The bodywork is perfectly proportioned with its wide, low stance, smooth panels and expressive haunches, helped by these large 21-inch wheels. That it still looks contemporary and almost timeless is a great measure of how well this SUV was styled to begin with. Now step inside the Levante GT Hybrid and you have the usual luxury car trimming. So everything that you look at and touch is covered in soft touch material. You have soft touch leather, these large swaths of wood veneer, these soft touch plastics everywhere where you look. But you know that the Levante has been around for a while now, and that shows in the general layout and design. Newer rivals, which are less expensive, have brought a new sense of crispness of styling to luxury SUV cabins, which the Levante doesn't have. Now, if you like driving as much as we do, that's not a problem at all. But what we don't like, and that is a bigger drawback, is the shared switchgear with lesser Stellantis offerings. For example, this touchscreen, which is functional by itself, very good to use, very easy to use, clear layouts. But you know that it's come from, say, a much lesser Stellantis product. And that's the same with these buttons for the AC controls or for these switches here. And another factor which you may not notice immediately is that the level of fit and finish, the level of sheer quality is maybe not quite up to what you would expect from a German rival. But having said that, like we stated before, if you like driving, none of these should be factors, but the Levante GT is a great place to spend time in. You have quite a car-like driving position to go with this, where you are seated low in the cabin, the big steering wheel is at a great position, and you have the full view of the bonnet out the windscreen. The frameless doors also make a great first impression, as they usually do. The instrument cluster is easy to use like the touchscreen and almost obsessively informative. You know exactly what the mild hybrid and all-wheel drive systems are doing, as well as details like transmission temperature and the oil pressure. But they could have had a more distinct Maserati theme to them. Happily, you still get hard buttons for most controls, a luxury in itself these days. Some of the features that enhance the driving experience of the Levante GT Hybrid are soft closed doors, heated and cooled front seats, powered steering adjustment, an access mode for the air suspension, powered seats and a panoramic sunroof. You don't get ADAS, but there are most passive safety features you could want. The off-road mode jacks up the air suspension and changes engine responses to make negotiating light trails easy, with the added help of hill descent control. Now, if you've bought something like the Levante GT Hybrid, invariably you will spend a lot of time in the back seat. And to be honest, it would be unfair to expect a level of space and comfort here that is very similar to, say, a more upright, full-size SUV. But the Levante does well for what it is. So while you don't have that much headroom if you are a tall adult, for me, I'm a medium-sized adult, 5'6" kind of is my height. For me, it's fine. Same with the amount of leg and knee room. In fact, that's quite a bit of it for me. So that is fine, but what we don't like is the design of this sort of seat here. You don't have that much underthigh support, but a bigger problem is this panel that sort of juts out. It sort of hurts you in the lower back, and while we don't like it, maybe some of you will like it. Having said that, the seats themselves hold you pretty well. You have this wide center armrest, a lot of features here, and a powered sunshade. So in terms of a sense of airiness, especially with the panoramic sunroof, it's good again. So it's a bit of a mixed bag in the backseat. Priced at Rs 1.45 crore onwards, the Maserati Levante GT Hybrid has some serious contenders to face up against. It could have done with better interiors and maybe a touch more performance, but that's missing the point. Despite the downsizing and the electrification, the Levante GT Hybrid is brimming with character. It makes driving an event, even in an SUV, with the sheer connection you can build with it. And it looks stunning and keeps you comfortable while doing so. A true Maserati then.